Guided by Voices. They're a band.
No.
I have. I've heard everything they've ever done. They're good. I'm a bit of a fan now.
Isn't that good?
I shouldn't even know who they are.
Welcome back to A Musician and a Filmmaker. My name is Greg. I'm, of course, joined by my co-host, Jordan. And this month, for the album discussion, we're talking about Vampire on Titus. So, Alex, I know him from the Animal Collective Discord. He has gone by various permutations of usernames. They all somewhat revolve around Deke, Mr. Deacon, Josh Dibb, from a little band you might have heard of about 15 seconds ago when I mentioned the name of the Discord server. But he's a big Guided by Voices fan as well as an Animal Collective fan, so he has been one of the handful of people that actually listened to the podcast somewhat and was like, hey, I'd like to be on, so here we are. But this time we're not being held at gunpoint, so that was nice of you. I want to thank you before we get started for that one. Unlike Tony, who's now currently fled the country and is on the FBI's most wanted list. But we're going to try to get him on for the next episode. We'll see how that works out. But welcome to the show, Alex, Deke, Mr. King Vitamin. What did you say your most recent?
We could go through all of them.
Pseudonym is?
Well, it's funny, full circle. Mr. Lurch was actually my first handle when I was like a kid thinking of making music, but I discarded that for some reason. And now, full circle, I'm back to Mr. Lurch. So, and I'm not going to explain what the thought process is because it would only make sense to me if you lived through my. Let's end that there. Let's.
We get it.
Yeah,
I get you.
I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. I also want to point out that both Jordan and I are wearing our Panda Bear PlayStation logo knockoff shirts. And I also got the hat because I'm cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What a coincidence. I'm wearing a button-up that has nothing to do with Animal Collective or music at all.
That would have been so epic, though, if you ripped it open and you were wearing the same shirt. Yeah.
Same shirt.
Surprise!
Does Robert Pollard ever wear a buttoned-up flannel like that?
I've seen. I mean, Bob Pollard wears whatever he wants, man. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I've seen
him
wear.
Bob
I've seen
or Robert? I don't want to be not cool when I address the man.
It's Bob Robert Pollard. That's his full. No, it's. I mean, either is acceptable.
Okay,
also, Uncle Bob. Apparently, Uncle Bob he's gained a lot of traction in like the fan base. I don't have my finger on the pulse, but I've been a fan for long enough to pick up on some like essential knowledge.
I got you.
Not Big Daddy though. Big Daddy's the name of the chicken on their first record cover, like on the cover of their first record.
Everyone knows that. I mean, you didn't have to point it out. That's such common knowledge. Everyone.
Of course. I'm sorry. I forget myself.
There is a bit of a connection to Animal Collective though, because a number of times, not just Pavement, but AV Terror has referenced Guided by Voices as an inspiration for sort of his guitar playing and trying to learn guitar as he was growing up. So it kind of fits into the ever-present running theme of this podcast. And, we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that we're now the only Animal Collective podcast that exists.
What happened to Bonefish?
They called it quits. They retired apparently as of like a week or two ago. So I mean, this is how you find out.
Yeah.
And
a lot of big news today.
A lot of breaking sad news. I wanted to do the softer topic first. We can admit that like this podcast exists because that podcast already existed. Now there's a healthy amount of spite in there, but in any creative endeavor, there's got to be, right? I mean, what else are we doing? What else would motivate you other than just, the passion to talk about the thing you like? So, I mean,
I suppose,
we have to thank Bonefish ultimately because
yes, if not for their podcast, we wouldn't have
the
ours.
Anger that we were fueled. We were guided by anger.
That's a band name.
Yeah. There you go.
I get not wanting to talk about Animal Collective every single month for years on end. That's kind of why we've, spread out the topics that we've brought up. So, it's cool that they, were able to build such an audience of that size and, get people in the Animal Collective sphere on and all that. So, I was actually kind of disappointed to hear that they were calling it quits. I was like, you know, I maybe you don't need to do it every month, and you know, you could just talk about new releases or just talk about whatever whenever. But
Yeah, it was more self-imposed than anything. It would have been nice to, but you know, people make decisions. I mean, like, yeah, we don't really. I can't claim to know what went on behind the scenes. I just respect their decision to hang up
yeah,
the coat, as it were. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I'd be lying if I had said that there weren't moments like where I've considered like, when do we end this podcast? Because
Right.
eventually, at some point, life is just going to get too busy for the scheduling and all that it takes to put one of these things together. So,
Granted, I mean, it's only as difficult as, like, I mean, like the restrictions are ultimately self-imposed. So who know, like, maybe not, it might not be the same format or the same frequency of like uploads, but there's no actual reason beyond not. I mean, I'm not trying to talk you guys into going until you're pensioners, those don't exist anymore.
That's like
So
5 years away for me.
AARP members,
I
again,
mean,
5 years
what
away
you guys
from Jordan.
you guys
so,
occupy well, now you guys occupy yeah, now you guys occupy a truly unique, like,
I guess.
niche in the sphere. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool what you guys do. I
But it
admire
also
it.
just kind of feels
I
like,
wish I had that
aw,
drive.
you know, like there was something
Yeah.
nice about having a healthy competition, at least, again, maybe self-imposed or like
Yeah.
one-sided, but I don't know.
Yeah, I
it was
don't
just
think
kind
they
of
were
like,
aware
You
of
corner the
this.
market.
now, well, that, and now there's the pressure that we're the only show. Now are we the official Animal Collective podcast? Can we change our name to Bonefish and get away with it? I mean, they're not
We are
using it
Bonefish
anymore, so I mean, no, I'm kidding. I like the name that's really unmarketable and long-winded and confusing and vague.
Yeah.
That's probably better than a direct reference to the band, you know, which
But it's the mark of a true fan. It like, yeah, musician
That's
and
true.
filmmaker. Yeah, it's also a pretty straightforward description of what you guys are.
right.
I guess.
That's why we started with the self-titled album, because it just all sort of like made sense. And I like that we just sort of just kind of picked the format at random and it just worked out. We should probably move on. We should probably actually talk about the album. So,
One
R.I.P.
question.
Bonefish podcast.
Well, let's hear this one question.
One question. Okay, I know Jordan's the musician. Who's the filmmaker?
Who is the filmmaker?
Well, I guess
Are you
we'll never
fucking
know.
kidding me right now? Are you fucking kidding me? I made it. I spent 2 years
That's a
making
good
a
question.
documentary, and you're asking who the filmmaker. No, okay. In fairness,
wondering this
Jordan
whole time.
also has made films in his past, short films. I don't know if he's ever done anything.
So the
feature
title
length,
is just
but-
describing Jordan. You're an accessory.
Well, it kind of applies to both of us. I mean, I've also made music. We're in Lunar Panel together. I have, like, you know, a handful of albums I made under other pseudonyms. So I mean,
We're both the musician
again,
and
vague,
the filmmaker.
vague and non-specific.
I'm just taking the piss, as I do.
You're not allowed to do that.
No, but you're also right. He is my Andy Richter.
Yeah.
And what an Andy Richter you are. I mean, that's like the highest.
It's
Yeah,
like a
I'm gonna
compliment and
actually
an
at some
insult.
point I'm gonna leave the whole show to Jordan. I'm gonna leave and go do something else, and then when I realize I can't succeed at anything else, I'll just come back to this. God damn,
All
are
right.
we gonna talk about this?
Let's talk
fucking
about
album?
this. Okay,
God
so we are
Sure.
talking about Guided by Voices 1992 album.
damn. One of.
One of,
I think
that's
it was
right.
three, 1993. Because they released an EP before, like, they're technically the first. Actually, I'm gonna hold off. Keep introducing that. I'll start rambling later.
We're going to go with 1993 for this
Wait,
album.
no, I have to interrupt the show once again
Oh my
because
god.
we didn't talk about the second piece of bad news.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Come
Literally
on.
right before we started recording this podcast, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys fame passed away at 82 years old, which is
Yeah.
really sad because he's a legend and he really did change like American pop music. And if anything, he was like one of the first people to really like pioneer the like album concept, like not just a collection of songs that would fit on an LP, like actually start, middle, and end sort of make an album that flows. Like, and the Beach Boys and the Beatles were often like taking inspiration from each other and just every time revolutionizing music. And I mean, he had such a long, difficult life. I
The
mean,
trajectory, his adult
Yeah.
life was so. Like,
I
between
mean-
like his yeah, his upbringing in like Eugene Landy and into his awful. And the worst part is that Mike Love's still alive. No offense, but
Yeah, that really is the saddest part of this whole thing is that
yeah,
that the hatred in Mike Love's heart, ironically, has kept him alive.
it's
And it's guided
calcified
by anger.
Yeah,
Guided by
exactly.
by anger.
But yeah, Brian Wilson, I mean, he helped, inspire me to make music in my own way, like the Smile, Pet Sounds era stuff, like really kind of just helped me understand like the basics of like not only like chord structure and like how songs can flow from one to the other on an album, but even within the same song. Like it might sound simple, the stuff on their finished tracks, but when you actually look at it from a music theory perspective, you realize the guy was a genius, and he really did change the landscape of music just with one ear, because he was deaf in his right ear. He could literally only hear out of his left ear.
I don't think I'll ever be able to listen to Till I Die the same way or at all, really. That's gonna hurt the next time I listen to that. That's gonna be awful. Or any Surf's Up, especially Student Demonstration Time, because that song sucks. But yeah,
now you're
that's
definitely
still
not going to be able to listen to it.
it's still
Now I'm going to absolutely skip it even harder than I did before.
just so many beautiful songs. Like I don't know, his voice was so even as it like wear down. It like in the 70s, it was just he had such a unique like a sweet delivery. He'll be, and we just lost Sly Stone too, so that's like a
yeah, like literally the day
punch.
before. I saw that documentary Long Promised Road from like 4 years ago, where it's Brian Wilson and a reporter like driving around the old like where the house he grew up in LA, and like all these places in the hills, and they drive by the Sly Stone mansion at one point, and he's like talking about times that they hung out, and it just, you could tell that he had a really like storied career, even if years of it was spent in bed or whatever. He accomplished a lot, and he was still making stuff like pretty much up until he was unfortunately diagnosed with some sort of early onset, or not on early onset, but some sort of early form of dementia that is inevitable. But he lived a long life, so there's peaks and valleys, swings and roundabouts, and he'll be missed. Now I do wonder, to sort of break the ice here, is this like a Voldemort Horcrux situation where Panda Bear, like half of his life force is now gone because Brian Wilson's dead?
Because Animal Collective, like for people who don't know, they're like the Beach Boys on acid, dude.
Yeah, but they're also the Beatles.
Yeah.
They're also literally
acid,
the Beatles.
dude.
On acid.
Well, that's redundant. Because the Beach
the
Boys
Beach
certainly
Boys.
never did acid.
Oh no. Least of all,
Smile
Pink
was
Floyd on
written
acid.
completely sober. Well,
now I'm
we'll
in
bring you
great
back
shape
for the
stuck in my
Smile
head.
episode.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That is
but I
actually
feel
not
like
a bad idea.
You know
there are
what would
others
be
more
nice?
deserving.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older? Then we'd be like Jordan. No.
Yeah.
It would be nice if we talked about the album that we came to talk about today. So Vampire on Titus, we were going to talk about Alien Lanes, but I guess this one was, I asked, like, what would you personally prefer to talk about? And so here we are. We're talking about Vampire on Titus.
I could explain I do have an explanation for the album title. Titus was the street that Bob used to live on in, I think, Dayton, Ohio. Well, I know Dayton, Ohio. And
He didn't live
I
on
think
Strawberry Philadelphia Drive?
No, I'm sorry. But he felt, he still felt pretty alive on, not living on Strawberry Philadelphia Drive. Smell of fried foods and pure hot tar. Jim Shepard was a friend and longtime collaborator of Bob's, who dubbed him the Vampire on Titus, because he was so like in awe of how prolific a songwriter Bob was, that he called him, like he said, he was like a vampire absorbing inspiration from the earth, from Titus where he lived. Unfortunately, Jim would later take his own life, and Bob would dedicate a song to him off a tribute record. But we have him to thank for Vampire on Titus as a concept, which I thought was cool.
That's cool. That is cool. And so
it's better than just like pulling words out of a hat and being like, that's a good title. Like I like that.
Then dig at Tom York.
Yeah. even if you did pull those words out of a hat, that was still pretty good, even without the actual, like, origin story there.
Yeah,
But,
it kind of ties into the like sort of flowery, not like flowery language, but like sort of poetically vague lyrics that go kind of throughout his work, where you can tell that there's intention and meaning behind it, but it's not immediately apparent because it's not like he's building a narrative. It's just sort of like giving you bits and pieces, and you can kind of make up your own interpretation.
I was actually going to bring that up because that was a line I had drawn between Emperor X and Guided by Voices. It's that, like, on paper, literally on paper, like in a vacuum, if you read the lyrics, they don't really signify anything, or at least they don't evoke any kind of feeling in you. It's kind of just like scattershot. Or maybe like you think, okay, maybe they have a good mouth feel, or like they're rhythmically like, but when you hear them in context, there's an intentionality, there's like an authenticity behind them that like kind of like on paper it might seem like pretentious, but when you hear it in practice, you kind of get it. You kind of get the meaning behind it, despite it not being outwardly apparent. That's the feeling I get when I listen to them, at least.
I was just going to say that there's a lot of crossover sort of between them and Ween, and I'm sure Guided by Voices was a inspiration for Ween. And I think actually what helped me understand the appeal of Guided by Voices was you used the word brown, which is how a lot of Ween's music is described, like that sort of like lo-fi, grungy kind of mic peaking, fuzzy guitar tone, like production of like the early Ween stuff, like the first 2 or 3 albums.
Don't quote me on this, but I think they either one opened for the other, or they like co-headlined a couple shows together.
That would not surprise me at all.
That makes sense.
It's like
Bob
it's like the
assholes.
Brian Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols, except none of them are crazy assholes.
Oh, Greg, I didn't know. I had no idea you were a Brian Jonestown Massacre fan.
Yeah, I don't know why you would know why. Yeah, it's just a complete surprise. I haven't tried to get you into them, and you've just ignored it or anything. It's fine. I only listened to 4 out of 6 volumes of your Guided by Voices select song playlists on YouTube anyway, so I mean, it's not like you owe me any sort of...
I see. You brought me on here to hold my feet to the fire. Is that it?
Maybe. But you can hold mine to the fire, too, if you've got some grudges you want to air out. There's a lot of like again, like Ween, where they just come up with like random like one-off characters that they can just reference in a song, and you're like, that probably means something to them, like Superior Sector Janitor X. I'm sure that like Robert Pollard knows exactly who that is, and we can just be like, yeah, that was a 45-second song. I don't know what you were trying to communicate there,
I was gonna say a lot of this album, like the lyrics, the songwriting, kind of, I don't know. There's a lot of like pulpy sci-fi imagery I've noticed in this one, especially with like Superior Sector Janitor X and the second track, number 2 in the Model Home series.
Mm-hmm.
I think where he sings about like having a cyber spouse, or like a mechanical spouse and a cyber son or something. It's like weird, like weird pulpy, like turn of the like mid-century sci-fi that I assume Bob grew up on.
Oh, like Fantastic Planet, kind of like that sort
or
of
like
era.
Philip K. Dick, maybe, if you've read any Philip K. Dick.
Yeah. Of course, I have started do Electric Sheep have, what is the name of the fucking Blade Runner book?
Do Androids Dream of Electric
Android,
Sheep?
yes. I've started that book like 5 times, and I get halfway through, and I'm like, when do we get to the plot?
Hey,
I know Blade Runner is thin on plot, but like, come on.
I've owned a copy of Ubik for 2 years, and I've barely touched like a third of it. So I know, I get it.
I want to know who Fertile Jim is.
Well, there is a Jim, at least one Jim in Bob's life that we know of, and it's his brother, Jim Pollard, who is on this record. He's one of the 3 people who recorded this record, along with, well, including Bob, which makes it a very unique configuration. Technically, this is barely Guided by Voices. This was still in this like weird interim period where they were more of an artistic collective that were like anchored by Bob's vision and only Bob's vision until this album. Actually, this is the first time Tobin Sprout gets a songwriting, gets his own song on a record, or 2 in this case. He gets 2 or 3. I can't remember. I'd have to look at the liner notes. But
Yeah, well,
Tobin Sprout is his bromantic partner, as you've seen in the footage I've shown you.
kind of like a Jay and Silent Bob.
Ah!
No,
Nice.
all right. Um, well, we've talked about like sort of the intention behind the music, but I also something I've sort of noticed in Guided by Voices, like the handful of albums I've heard by them, is there is just sort of like a whatever approach. Like there is intention, but it's also just like sort of like sometimes recordings sound slapped together or done in one take because they are. And it's not like normally when you hear something like this, you're like, oh, that's a demo for the song they're gonna go to the studio and record. And it's like, no, that's the song. It's done. I've recorded it. What more do you want? You want it to be mixed so you can actually hear what the fuck I'm saying over the guitar? I recorded it already. What's the problem?
Because
I'm not gonna go
yeah,
back.
part of it was limitation because these guys were recording stuff out of like basements, actual
Right.
there's a track that I think off B1000, which we're not talking about, despite it being the Guided by Voices record, where Bob recorded the vocal during like
You
in
had the
Tobin Sprout's.
opportunity to say, just for the record, you could have been like, should we talk about B1000? That's like the Guided by Voices album.
Well,
For
yeah,
some
but I
reason,
didn't
you
want
wanted
to.
to.
Talk about God. Well, no, not for some reason. Vampire and Titus is my favorite record. That's why we were
It's your
talking about
favorite,
it.
but okay, I get you.
Yeah.
We were
Okay.
also we also considered Alien Lane, so it's fair. Those are actually the three I listened to prepare for this thing where we spent half an hour not talking about it. So, like, how low tech are we talking? Was it literally just like not
Four
even a
track.
4 track? Was it a four
It
track?
was,
Okay.
it was a four track. Four track was Bob's like first love. He I think he's been quoted as saying it best captures the essence of his songwriting. Like when you just pare it down to four tracks. That might be
But
bullshit.
it
I
was
don't
it just
know.
like we feed a guitar line into one track and then the other three are just mics in the room, and if they pick up what we need them to, great.
I mean, that's what I used to. That's what I did with my band, the Putties. That we had to. Well, that was more limitation, but there's also I don't know. I've always had a soft spot for like songs that sound like shit, which this album does. This album was
They
produced
don't
by
sound like
nobody.
shit. They sound brown.
Brown, yeah.
Brown as hell. But it's we talked about this when you sent me that first volume of the like select songs that you had, and we're jumping all over from like albums to albums between each song, and I obviously you can note the difference in fidelity from like the lowest quality or 4 track tape recording to like something they did in an actual studio. And I was like, that's kind of jarring to jump around. You're like, it's jarring on the actual albums too, in between tracks. And this album is definitely like some tracks sound like they were recorded in like in real time, and then others feel like sort of polished in a way. So it's dynamic.
Like Jar of Cardinals and Gleamer, those two tracks, they sound like companion tracks, but they also stick out like sore thumbs within the context of the record, which is funny because like the GBV Selects, the reason I took that approach is because that's how I used to listen to Guided by Voices. That's how I got into them. I had this weird kind of hyperfixation where I wanted to consume as much as possible without committing to a single project. So I just go between records, like pick up home in on like titles that I thought were interesting, kind of like crate digging, like blind crate digging. And like the first two tracks that I heard off this record were Gleamer and Jar of Cardinals, which gave me the wrong impression for how this album actually sounded because those tracks are essentially just jangle pop or like
Right.
jangle pop as Guided by Voices can get, which is great. They're beautiful songs and there's a reason they're fan favorites,
But they
but
also
they don't
have like
represent.
pitch. Yeah, they have pitch shifting on the vocals, and like that's only like very rare on the like that's what
Gleamers,
almost kind of makes it feel a little bit more like Ween. And again, I'm
Ween,
sure. Well, this was put out. This was 1992. That's around the same time that Ween was putting out like
Pure Guava,
Pure
and
Guava was
Gleamer
92.
sounds
Yeah,
like a yeah, Gleamer sounds like a Pure Guava track, kind of like the
yeah.
harmony, like the weird, the pitched up harmonies. It sounds like
So to tie it back into our lengthy digression earlier, it's
yes,
almost like a Beach Boys Beatles thing, where maybe they weren't like, oh, they did this, we got to do that kind of relationship, but they're contemporaries, is what you could probably consider them. They were in a similar sort of level. Although I don't know much about Guided by Voices, like as far as labels go. Like, what was their Were they just like were they one of those bands where the guy from Nirvana, Kurt Cobain,
The guy from,
I couldn't
you
remember
know,
his fucking name.
Chris Novoselic.
We're talking about real musicians like Bob Pollard and Gene Ween, but
Yeah.
is Guided by Voices like one of those bands where like as Nirvana was blowing up, people asked him what bands he listened to, and he goes, "Oh, Guided by Voices," and then Guided by Voices gets like a $500,000 record deal or something.
No, but it was fun. Like Propeller, the album immediately before this, 91, I think, was essentially that was Bob's like swan song. After that, he essentially just dissolved the band and decided to focus on his family, which awful timing because that was the record that propelled them into the indie sphere. Like that's when
No
like
pun intended.
Thurston Moore started like name dropping them in interviews, and like I think Stephen Malkmus, uh,
Should I know who Thurston Moore is?
Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth.
Sonic Youth.
Yeah, the guy who fumbled the bag, as it were.
So I guess yes, maybe, or no.
And Kim Deal, the bassist for Pixies, and
okay.
Breeders, also a Dayton, Ohio native. They became friends for a while until Bob kind of alienated her with his. That's a story for a later time. I think Under the Bushes, Under the Stars, my second favorite record of theirs, kind of ended that friendship because they decided to collaborate, and that was a terrible idea at the time, at least for both of them. It's just warring egos, kind of like the state of Pixies. That's why Kim left Pixies.
Were they self-distributed, or did they have some sort of label putting their stuff out?
Not until this record did they have like an actual like the backing of a label. That like everything up to this record, and I think hold on, let me do some inventory. Five records I think under their belt at this point, all self-financed and like self-distributed to the point where they had to be re-released like years after the fact, kind of like a Spirit Dance situation.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to make another Brian Jonestown Massacre reference, but of course you wouldn't understand, so
I don't even know what you're talking about, dude.
Yeah. Well, Brian Jones was the drummer for No, well, I actually really enjoyed this album. In fact, it grows on me with more and more re-listens, and it's rare that, well, not only this is a unique kind of band where like going back to that sort of whatever philosophy that I'm imposing, may or may not be a thing. They do sort of just have like their own sort of philosophy of like the song is like it can just end, like it doesn't need to be a full song, which can be kind of annoying when you start getting into the groove of something, or like the tone and the feeling. You're like, oh, where's this gonna go? Oh, nowhere, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, I can see from their perspective being like, again, like, what do you mean make it a 3-minute song? Why? I had one idea, I recorded it, it's done. I don't need to arrange it and repeat anything, even though he does repeat a lot of lyrics, but, you know.
The thing I admire about it, these, like, you can tell that Bob has been holding on to some of these ideas for years, and he'll, like, pepper them into a lot, like, his songwriting over a years-long window. Like, he name drops, I think he says Static Jive in What About It and Grandfather 5, both of which pop up later in their discog. Like they have later release, like an EP, a favorite of mine called Static Airplane Jive. But to your point, like one of my favorite tracks off this record is Cool Off Kid Kilowatt, which is like barely a minute, or no, it's under a minute. So I do respect them for actually like getting me into the idea of bite-sized songs, because there is a lot of merit to that. Just like getting like a couple like a 30-second idea out there and like doing the best, like the most with that time you can, I guess, making the most efficient use of that time, even if it's 30 seconds.
One thing I noticed about it is that there is sort of like a quality of like rhyming isn't necessarily the most important thing all the time. Which, I mean, I might disagree but I also hate writing lyrics, so I mean, I can't exactly blame him for just being like, it's what I wanted to say. It doesn't matter if it rhymes with the previous line. Like, none of the lines need to rhyme with any of the previous ones at all, and it's still a song I wrote. So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, I can admire it from an artistic perspective, but also I would not do the same thing. But I'm just a filmmaker. What do I know? I'm not the titular musician of this podcast. So, I mean,
It's like reading E.E. Cummings. I appreciate I appreciate the artistic intent, but I hate reading E.E. Cummings. I've hated it since I learned who E.E. Cummings was. And especially now that I know who E.E. Cummings was, because he was kind of an asshole.
I know him from the Childish Gambino line, "E.E. coming on her face. Now that's poetry in motion."
Now that's poetry.
That's
that's real poetry. Yeah,
That's art right there. Jordan, I would like you to have an opportunity to actually say something. Because I feel like you've just been kind of observing. What did you think of this album, Jordan?
Okay, so it's fascinating because I have been observing, because this is the first time I've ever listened to Guided by Voices. I've never listened to them before this album.
Really?
Yeah. So
I wouldn't have guessed, actually, because you're such a I don't know, you're such a musical omnivore. I would have guessed you.
You know, it's so funny. There's certain things. Greg knows this. There's certain things that are just like weird, like these big things that make sense. Like, you know, like I've never really listened to Pavement either. Like, you know, I'm a huge Animal Collective fan, but like a lot of the bands that influenced them, like
you've heard Automine,
you know.
You've heard Pavement. I mean, what more do you need to hear?
Right?
You've also heard Duster through Automine. So yeah, that knocks two off the list.
There you go. But no, it's really interesting. It was very interesting to listen to this album because like a lot of stuff kind of came up, you know, inside my head. Like I was playing fucking Tony Hawk's Pro Skater while I was listening to this for the first time, and I was like
a great.
It worked so well, and I was like, not only is this working so well, but it's giving me this like truly nostalgic feeling, and I realized that the reason it was doing that, despite the fact that I've never heard this band before or this album, is because of how much it influenced that I did listen to while I was playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater when I was a teenager. So I was like, you know, all like the whole indie sphere, the sphere of the word of the day, is like indebted to Guided by Voices, because like I'm thinking about like the Shins, like Neutral Milk Hotel, you know, bands like those. It's like all those sounds were coming up in this, just in a very kind of like primitive way almost, you know, with the lo-fi aspect of it. What I listened to a lot of in my teenage years was Daniel Johnston, and I was like, these short songs that are so unpolished, very reminiscent. And I'm not too sure what the timeline is, like who's influencing who on this one, because I know Daniel Johnston was doing a lot of stuff in the early 90s as well, and was another one of those like you said, Greg, like you know, hey, Kurt Cobain's wearing a Daniel Johnston shirt, like let's go and investigate who this person is, and then you know, all of a sudden they become a big artist as well because of that. But yeah, definitely reminded me of that. And also, the funny thing is that I've been like a huge fan of the band Nada Surf for like ever, and Doug Gillard, Gillard, I don't know how you pronounce his last name.
Doug Gillard, yeah, he's a member of Guided by the current incarnation. Yeah, okay,
exactly.
That's a cool.
So I was like, this is kind of funny because like,
here's
you know,
another one you might
they're an
you might not
influence
have
to
guessed,
Animal
like another
Collective.
band inspired, like directly
They share a
inspired by
member
Guided by
with
Voices.
like, you know, one of my other
The
favorite
Strokes.
bands. So I was like, this is
Albert
not okay. I've
Hammond
never
Jr.
actually listened to this,
is
but
like
listening
a
to the
diehard.
album, I was like, this clicked
in
with
fact,
me. I have to
he
obviously
owes
go down this rabbit
he
hole
he
because
cites this record
I loved everything
as
about this
like
record. It's great.
he owes getting into Guided by Voices to this record specifically, and I couldn't believe it when I heard this, but Donkey School, which I have not heard talked about anywhere, and personally, it's one of my favorites. It's like one of the best things Tobin's ever done, which is saying something because it's his first track as a member of Guided by Voices. It's
Save
the
best
one
for
truly,
first, they always say.
yeah, it's the one truly haunting song on the record for me. I don't know, something about it.
It's
the,
very
like
Daniel
the
Johnston,
wailing,
that one especially.
yeah, the wailing of the feedback in the background, like throughout the song, as it like, but not even in the background. It's like it like bleeds into the forefront, kind of like a donkey braying, actually, which might be intentional. I don't know. I know Jim, the like Bob's brother, is credited in the liner notes as playing the feedback, playing guitar feedback. Yeah, that's what he's, and drums, I think, or no, guitar, because Bob does the drums, I think, on this record, which is cool.
Yeah, that was interesting. When I was looking on their Wikipedia at just like the different like whoever was playing what instrument throughout the years. At some point, Bob Pollard just stopped playing guitar and was like basically only a vocalist, which is surprising. I would assume it's like guy with guitar singing. Like it just seems so like by listening to it on the album, you're like one guy wrote and is playing the guitar part on this song, but no, it's and that's what's also kind of interesting about this band is that holy shit, they have done so much in the last. When did they start? Like late '80s, like '87, something like that.
Technically, the band has existed since 1983. It's just unrecognizable. It's a completely different. The only constant ever was Bob. He
you know what band that reminds me of? The Brian Jonestown Massacre, because of Anton Newcomb. It's like the same thing where you go on their Wikipedia page and you see like past members and it's like 30 people. And you're like, Jesus Christ. And then you go to the discography and it's 40 LPs. I mean, it's been 42 years, so that's understandable, but like, Jesus Christ, that's a lot of music to write. And every album has like 17 to 25 songs. It's like insane. I cannot fathom being someone who is just so like confident in their art that they can just like, you know, put an idea out and be like, it's done, it's on the album, it's, you know, I'm gonna forget about it unless I have to play it live again. Like I have to sit there and craft something in order to like be satisfied with it and be like, I want other people to hear this. I'm not saying that this is a negative to have 40 albums. I mean, if you've got 40 albums full of great songs, more power to you. But just like from someone who is being introduced to this band, that's pretty intimidating as like someone who is just like, where do you even start? And thankfully you gave us a great starting point, which is this like sort of early 90s to mid 90s era. I mean, Alien Lanes, you can hear the sort of evolution, but like, and the similarities as the albums progress, at least from what I've heard. Like, B1000, I think, is actually a better album overall, at least in terms of like consistency. But
I can see that.
I don't know if it has as high of highs as Vampire on Titus and Alien Lanes. Like, other than Game of Pricks, which for the record, I didn't actually say that's the only song I knew by them until you introduced me to more of their stuff. I was like, you kept bringing them up, just like randomly recommending it to people, and I was like, okay, yes, Guided by Voices, I'm interested. Where do I begin if I know literally only one 90-second song that was on the IT Crowd 15 years ago or whatever?
That's how I felt with Aphex Twin like years ago. Like, where the hell do I start? Yeah, I know selected ambient works, but I also know that it isn't like a good representation. Like the guy's done so many things under so many different like names.
Well, at least Guided by Voices, their album tracks, their album titles all at least are in English with consonants and vowels.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's not always coherent English. Like
it doesn't need to be. As long as you can like type it out on a keyboard without having to like look it up.
Cool off, kid, kill.
Good in my book.
But thanks for staring into my soul before you said Brian Jonestown Massacre. I think that finally did it. Now I have no choice but to listen to them.
Where's my my little golden uncut gems Furby? I can dangle it in front of the camera and go, you want to watch Dig and listen to, you know, their Satanic Majesty's second royal request or whatever the hell it's called.
Speaking of, that's the only Rolling Stones record that I even care about. Satanic Majesties. Well, the first one, not the Brian Jonestown Massacre. I know the connection. I know who Brian Jones is. I listened to Cameron Winter too. But this actually is a good place to start, like Guided by Voices wise, because this is technically the first proper Guided by Voices record in that it's the first one released after the original incarnation of the band dissolved. Or
so
it's the first one.
In a way, is it like how after Glenn Danzig left Misfits? Except it would be like if Glenn Danzig didn't leave Misfits.
Yeah, kind of.
That sort of separation of like what the band began as opposed to what it continued to be for decades.
Speaking of, I think Bob could write Where Eagles Dare, but Glenn couldn't write like I'm a Scientist, for instance. Just to get a dig at Glenn, dig at Danzig, Danzig dig.
You got to.
You got to mention the word hot dogs somewhere if you're going to make fun of Glenn Danzig, because that's really what's going to cut deepest. He does not eat hot dogs. God damn it.
I do not drink my own.
But he also doesn't smoke marijuana. That's really important for the world to know.
This is the first Guided by Voices record to kind of set that precedent of, you know, a handful of like a loose concatenation of like song ideas that actually make for a pretty compelling listen. Like this is when you start getting the the average like song length becomes like sub 3 minutes or 2 minutes usually.
It is interesting that like the songs that stick with me more are the ones that are closer to a traditional song length, like SOT, S-O-T, SOT, not S-O-U-G-H-T. No.
Yes.
SOT. It's not SOD or SAT or SET or SIT. I'm going crazy. I'm sorry.
I think it's a pejorative for drinkers. A sot is a drunkard, which is perfect because if there's one thing people know about Bob Pollard and Guided by Voices is that they are a drinking man's band and that they're a band of drinking men.
I thought you were going to say that they're known for using pejorative terms for different groups of people, as has become apparent through reading the lyrics on like a handful of their albums. And so I have to ask, before I even accuse him of anything, is Bob Pollard gay or queer in any sense?
No, he was like 37 when he wrote these songs, and
in the 90s.
He doesn't use these words anymore. At least he hasn't made any like the worst thing I can say about Bob is that he's an asshole. He is a premium. He can be a premium asshole, but
is he a crazy asshole or just like a sort of a traditional asshole?
No, he just likes to say stuff like he likes, like, for instance, my favorite Bob Pollard quote of all time. In the middle of a set, he shouted, I think this was toward the end of, this was like the last tour before the hiatus in like 2004. He screamed into the crowd, "Fuck the SpongeBob movie."
Wow.
Another Ween connection, I guess.
That's
another Ween connection. There you go.
Stab at Ween.
Fuck that movie. They didn't close with one of my songs. They closed with the fucking Ocean Man.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking. Expecting Brainchild is the track on this record that uses the F slur. I didn't catch it at first.
It's not the only one, is it?
It's
or maybe
the only
I'm
one
thinking of the other albums, yeah.
You're thinking of Alien Lanes. Alien Lanes has, and it's the worst track on the album too because it's barely a song, Hit, where he says giggling. At least that, I think, is a reference to a local band at the time, like a Dayton, Ohio band at the time called...
But part of me also just wonders if it was just like, he wasn't using it as like an insult. It's just more like, if I want to quickly refer to a group of people, this is the, like, it's like that Always Sunny episode where Mac almost gets crushed by the piano and Danny DeVito's character calls him the F slur, and then that saves his life. And that's did that save his life? Was it justified? Who really is owed that lottery ticket?
Like, I don't want to run defense for everyone who like ever used like an outdated descriptor for someone, but in Bob's case, I'm inclined to believe AV Terror, Animal Collective connection.
It's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. They addressed it.
Yeah, but let's talk about Loch Raven for a second. Let's not.
You're right. Let's talk about Kids on Holiday.
Let's talk about Kids on Holiday.
Let's talk about Forest Gospel.
Yeah, Forest Gospel.
Yeah, the most controversial song that isn't a non-controversial song as it it's
stands. A controversial pronunciation.
But Bob seems to have a fairly good head on his shoulders for a functioning alcoholic. He's always been environmentally conscious, and I remember him taking a dig at Mitch McConnell a couple times, like in live boots, which is funny. It's also ironic because on one hand, like, if you had to decide between the two principal songwriters, if I were to put a gun to your head, Greg,
another,
here it comes.
And you look at Bob Pollard, who is like a drunken, loudmouth, kind of like surly older man, and then you look at Tobin Sprout, who writes these like twee ballads. And he looks pretty unassuming. He kind of has like
it's like the Dean Ween and Gene Ween dichotomy, where you have the one guy that writes the butt rock and the other guy that writes the sweet ballads. And then they get together and they write goofy songs about like literally anything, like stallions.
Yeah, but I say that because it turns out Bob is kind of, at least kind of like more liberal than you'd expect. And Tobin Sprout donated to the Trump campaign.
Wow.
Like multiple Trump campaigns, actually.
He's like, I regret giving him 5 cents from all my different listens.
He was big into the Tea Party in like the late aughts, early, like you guys would remember that better than I would, because I was like in primary school.
I do remember, because I was in like middle school, and even then I knew nothing about politics, but even then I knew that they were idiots. So
Toby, they're both Midwest, like they're Midwesterners, they're kindred spirits. But and I love Tobin's songwriting. I love what he's contributed to the band, guitar wise, songwriting wise. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather meet Bob personally. I feel like I'd get along better with Bob, even if Bob like has like smells like reeks of alcohol. But I believe he's toned it down a bit. Now, I mean, he's like 67 now. So, or 66, actually. Wait, 67. Yeah.
Mm.
Speaking of, there's a new record on the horizon. It comes out on his birthday. I think it's called Thick, Rich, and Delicious. And if you can believe it, Bob was born on Halloween. He was born on Halloween, 1957.
Very fitting.
Yes.
Another reason why Glenn Danzig
Yeah.
is not.
Glenn
probably
Danzig
not be a
wishes he
Yeah.
was born on Halloween.
Oh, that would sound so like prime Bob Pollard covering Halloween. That'd be great.
That would be good.
I wish. What could have been, but I digress.
Is there a Danzig song called Halloween? I mean,
you don't know that?
That's a dumb question. Of course there is. If you don't know anything about Glenn Danzig, you could assume that there's a song.
That, of course.
I take it back.
So Bob Pollard though is a prolific guy. So
Yes.
you're talking about Brian Jonestown Massacre having 40 albums. I mean, like Guided by Voices plus Bob Pollard's solo output has to surpass that, right?
No. I'm saying Guided by Voices has 40 albums, not BJM. They only have 20. I mean, come on.
They
Let's
only
be
have
reasonable
20.
here. They only put out 6 albums in 3 years in the mid 90s. But you know who also put out like 6 albums in 2 years was the Beach Boys.
Yeah. Or how about King Gizzard? That's a pretty prolific band.
That's
Yes.
not a band. I'm sorry. That's actually that's fake news.
I was looking up Bob Pollard's discography, like expanded discography, and I don't know, the first result for images looks so. I've never seen this image before, but it looks like straight out of 1967. Hold on.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and this must have been like late 80s, early 90s. This looks great.
Are you sure that's not Anthony Bourdain in the 90s?
He kind of, you know what? He kind of does, which is, it's more flattering than his Wikipedia photo, where he looks like he's like,
wow, yeah,
yeah,
He looks like Bilbo after he gave the ring to Frodo.
Like when he's
just
like all
aging rapidly.
freaking out, yeah.
Between his solo stuff and Guided by Voices, I was gonna, God, it must be closer to like 100.
That's
now.
So crazy.
Yeah, it is, because he's been releasing, like, contemporaneous to Guided by Voices. He's been releasing, so like once Guided by Voices like broke up or went on hiatus in like 2004, he was immediately back to song. Like he never stopped writing songs. He just found a different outlet for them, a different media. Yeah, I think that year he released a double LP of solo material.
Wow.
Which has some good stuff on it. Not my favorite. Bob's solo stuff is a bit more hit and miss for me. Once you get out of the 90s, because in the 90s he released like four solo records that are like almost perfect. Some of the best stuff he's ever recorded, like Subspace. But like that's actually how I got into Guided by Voices. Not through Guided by Voices, but through Robert Pollard's Waved Out from 1998, which I'd be happy to talk about some other time, but that's not the topic for today.
We're going to start a spin-off podcast that's literally just talking about Guided by Voices. It's going to be called Guided by Voices. That's the name of it.
That's pretty good.
I was going to suggest King Shit and the Golden Boys, which is the name of the
workshop
record.
it.
Could be guided by Voices, and then colon, and then We'll have
Or
like
Guided by
3.
Anger, since it came up
Well, yeah,
like
there
3
you go. Yeah,
times.
yeah.
3
Guided
times
by
there.
anger.
Yeah. Should we like? I mean, should we go into like track by track, or is like a how do you guys usually go about this?
Well, if we do,
We mix it up every
this would be a
time.
2-hour episode if we did every single song. So I'm just gonna list. We've already talked about a number of the songs I've
Yeah, we have.
listed as highlights, but it's more than half of the album that I've listed. So I'm just gonna go through my personal highlights, and then if there's something that we haven't talked about that you want to, we'll do that.
Good idea.
So, Wished I Was a Giant, solid start. Expecting Brainchild, we talked about. Donkey School. Dusted is probably in my top 3 from this album.
Dusted is beautiful. Like the lyricism on that is actually like you wouldn't have get like that's why I asked you to listen to the re-recorded version, the one that's just Bob on guitar, because that way you can actually make out what he's saying properly. And what he's saying is weirdly like poetic, like poetic in a way that kind of makes sense, which is unlike Guided by Voices. But it really stands out to me in that regard. Also, Expecting Brainchild, I just want to touch on that one like guitar riff that kicks in during the like it kicks in out of nowhere during the chorus, makes the song for me. I love it. It's like the way I said it, it kind of sounds like the Doom, like I'm trying to poorly recite the Doom riff. Like, yeah.
I need to apparently take more painkillers than I already did for my back.
How'd you throw out your back, Greg?
I sneezed.
Wow. You see, it's always
That's what happened. I'm 29
always the
years
weakest
old, and
thing.
I sneezed, and I
wait till you
like
turn
this.
30. Wait till you turn 30, my friend.
I'm just
You're
gonna
just gonna
disintegrate.
you're just gonna wake up, and you're everything.
I'm gonna stand up, and then I'm just gonna collapse into a pile of bones. Like,
that's how life works.
Yeah. I still can't believe I'm 24, and now you guys are talking about going into your 30s. That's something else.
Well, I'm gonna be 38 in 2 months, so I'll be
Yeah, we
old.
know, Jordan.
Oh, right.
Sorry. I could tell.
Everybody knows.
do you guys remember the movie 13 Going on 30 with Jennifer
Oh,
Garner?
yeah, absolutely. Classic.
Yeah, I had a huge crush on Jennifer Garner. Of course I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wasn't Mark Ruffalo in that? It's a
Probably.
weird thing for Mark. Yeah, when Mark Ruffalo was being billed as like a romantic lead, kind of like Andrew Lincoln was for like 1 or 2 films before the.
Oh yeah,
Walking
he's
Dead
in
kicked
Love
off.
Actually.
He is in Love
Yeah,
Actually.
that's right.
Yeah. So is everyone in England and Ireland, because Liam Neeson's
Yeah.
also there.
Everyone.
You know what's funny about this is a very I might just cut this part out, but I found it funny how as a kid I only knew Liam Neeson from The Phantom Menace, and so when Qui-Gon dies at the end of the movie, I didn't have the like capacity as a kid to realize that like just because you die in one movie doesn't mean that you're A, not still alive for real, and B, can star in other movies where you're still alive and not Qui-Gon Jinn. So when I
Holy
saw
shit.
him on like the poster of Love Actually, I was like, what? It just didn't compute. Did my camera die?
Still alive?
That's a great freeze frame.
That was
Camera
great.
to
It's
die.
beautiful.
That was
You
great.
gotta keep that.
We always
For
keep it when
posterity.
this
That
happens.
was
Wait, are you
phenomenal.
kidding me? I had a full.
What a way to go out.
Turns out Greg was AI the whole time. I knew
This
it.
is why I bought backup batteries, because this kept fucking happening, and I would have no camera and I'd have to switch to that shitty little webcam.
We
Amazing.
have to troubleshoot Greg.
It wouldn't be an
Podcast
episode of this
continue.
podcast if I didn't have to troubleshoot something.
I will take the opportunity to touch on, like, I share plenty of favorite tracks with Greg on this. I'd like to hear yours, but like, Donkey School, Expecting Brainchild, Cool Off Kid Kilowatt, Dusted. Although I think I'm torn. I think I prefer the EP version. Marchers in Orange, we haven't talked about. Marchers in Orange has some of the most unique instrumentation.
Well, I was going to, and then my camera died.
Nice.
Sorry.
I was literally like, I can't wait to finish this point so I can bring up Marchers in Orange.
I love Marchers in Orange. I love I want to say it's a melodic. It sounds like a melodica, or it could just be like a pump organ, some kind.
I was gonna ask what that sort of keyboard, whatever they were using was, because like literally this is so like lo-fi. That one almost sounded like he literally just set up the recorder, didn't mic anything, like just used the onboard mic, because you can hear the like clicking of the keys as he's playing it, which is like normally you're not supposed to hear, and only you in the room hear it. But that kind of added a little bit of a charm to it. And it also felt like if this was a different band, like I can see this, like if you would develop this into like a song with multiple parts and not just like, that's the idea, it's done. It could be like Welcome to the Black Parade, or something like more sort of operatic like that, like Bohemian Rhapsody or what have you. Like it felt like it could go a lot of places. It just doesn't, which is fine, I guess. But like Anakin says in episode 2-3 of Star Wars, I want more, but I know I shouldn't. I took George's direction from that one behind the scenes clip where he's like, I want you to turn when you say, but I know I shouldn't. So,
as you should. It might surprise you to know that Marchers in Orange is one of the handful of tracks off this record to actually be performed live often, because it sounds absolutely nothing like the album version. It sounds more like the version they re-recorded, which is just a straightforward rocker, which is cool, but it kind of, I don't know, it gets rid of the personality that track kind of had. Like it occupies a unique spot on the record. It sounds like nothing else on that record.
On an album of songs that sound like demos, it sounds the most like a demo.
Yeah.
Like where you would be like, okay, and now you combine it with these other two ideas you had, and you've got like a Beatles song or whatever.
Perhaps Now the Vultures I was expecting to be the closer, because it sounds like a closer. It's almost kind of anthemic in a way, like that other tracks aren't. The two that I mentioned, Jar of Cardinals, Gleamer, I recorded myself the other night singing along to Non-Absorbing, because it's such an earworm that I had to, like, I felt like, there's so many earworms in like unexpected earworms in Guided by Voices, like Kicker of Elves, the Kicker of Elves, and this is like the Do You See Me, like
I was singing that one to Jordan before we started, like right when he joined the Zoom call, because I was asking if he could see me, and then that lyric came up. So there's also a Ween song called Did You See Me? So
yes, there is. It's a good one.
There's plenty of connections, just like the Force.
There are like 2 or 3 tracks, you'd be surprised to know, since this is my favorite GBV record, that I don't like off this record. I want to see if you can guess. Yeah. I admit it.
That's me posing for the thumbnail, not a reaction to what you just said. But what are the tracks that you dislike?
Is it Wandering Boy Poet?
Oh, no. Wandering Boy Poet is lovely. In fact, Guided by Voices did 2 Peel sessions in the late 90s, and they opened their first one with which are too few for Guided by Voices, because like some of their best live stuff are on these John Peel sessions. They open with Wandering Boy Poet by Bob on piano, and it sounds like McCartney. It sounds like McCartney, like solo McCartney. It's beautiful, and it's earnest too. But E5 kind of sucks.
That was the last highlight I had that we didn't mention.
Oh, so I'm sorry. I don't know.
Don't apologize for having a different opinion. You are your own person.
I don't know. E5 kind of meanders in a way that I don't care for, which is weird because you know me, Greg. You know the kind of stuff I listen to. I listen to.
You're a Swans guy, aren't you?
Kind of. I not as much as I wanted to be, but maybe I shouldn't. The more I learn about Michael Gira, the less jazzed I am.
Well, let me amend that. You're a guy that likes the other version of Always You by Animal Collective, right?
Yes, the Dub Lab version.
So now that everyone has just heard the clip, as after I cut to it as soon as I said that, they'll understand what you are in favor of. So
I think the problem is that everything sounds out of sync on that track, and I just can't really get it. But I do like the riff at the heart of E5. That's a cool little riff. World of Fun is kind of, I don't know. It's like there's too little of it, and like the stuff that is there, I don't really care for. It kind of reminds me. Have you heard Tim Heidecker talk about Guided by Voices? There's a
No.
clip on YouTube that you guys need to listen to. It is spot on.
Ho time, the spirits are rising and everyone comes clean. The universe of cry on man has placed itself in wondrous sparkling trees. There is nothing more than that.
You know, you can tell he does it out of passion, but it's the funniest like impression I've ever heard. It's the only impression I've ever heard of Bob Pollard. And I'm glad it was Tim Heidecker. Like, it's an impression of his singing style, the
Oh, okay.
kind of
Well, then,
fake
yeah.
British inflection he puts on.
I was gonna mention that. I just kept getting like a very light like. Why did
Yeah.
I know they're American? They're from fucking Dayton, Ohio, the most
Dayton,
American
Ohio.
place you can be from. Why do they sound British? Like almost.
It is- it is
but
night and
almost. Not completely, but it is just like sometimes you're just like, I know it's not British, but I'm getting a British vibe from this very American album.
It's kind of a deceptively simple answer. Bob, like, a lot of his hero worship, like a lot of the objects of his hero worship are from that first British invasion. So you know, you have the Who, the Stones, Beatles, especially the Beatles. And I guess that kind of bleeds into his song, like it bleeds into his songwriting style to the point where he starts like, I don't know if if it was intentional at first. It's definitely intentional now. I can't really pinpoint when he started like singing in that weird, that like kind of British accent, because the early stuff he just sounds like Michael Stipe. In fact, their first record sounds a hell of a lot like early REM, which is cool, but it's just not what I'm looking for in Guided by Voices. Yeah, that's about it as far as like tracks that I dislike or just don't really care for from like off this record, because everything else there's always something to like. And one thing I wish GBV did more often, that they almost exclusively did during this era, is use like samples or like found sound, because some of the stuff they do with feedback on this record is excellent. And the false intro to Expecting Brainchild.
Bob, would you and Living Praise Choir lead us in To God Be the Glory?
And then
Well, there's a few tracks that have like a false, that like there's one track I can't remember what it is, but it has like 3 false starts, and then the actual
that's Donkey
song.
School.
Is it? Yeah, and then like there's only like 30 seconds left in the track anyway, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
great.
But it does, yeah. I like that sort of collage-y, like sort of soundscape, like one sound to the next flow. Again, it draws another parallel to Ween, like how Birthday Boy kind of reminds me of a Guided by Voices song, like.
I could hear that.
Or even Exactly Where I'm At off of White Pepper sounds like it's going to be like this upbeat, bluesy kind of thing, and then it just hard cut stops and starts another song, and you're like, oh, okay. I'm kind of split on that, because it's kind of cool to like throw in, but it's also like you're giving the audience blue balls, because you're being like, hey, here's the vibe. Just kidding. It's something completely different. You're like, all right. Why introduce it in the first place?
It's not as bad as what Bob like also like he doesn't do on this record, but well, not really. But he does it on Propeller, I know, and a couple of EPs. It's actually the EP immediately before this, where he'll cannibalize his own material. He will take an intro or like a snippet from a song that he either hasn't released yet or has already released, and he'll just mash it together with us. Like there's a song off the EP that precedes this, that's just like the first 10 seconds are just Hot Freaks, the first 10 seconds of Hot Freaks, and then there's a hard cut to like a weird Tobin Sprout ballad where Bob is kind of like bleeding through the mix like a ghost, and he's like ranting and raving. It's I think it's called Off the Floor. That's a cool little snippet that you wouldn't expect any other band to just like release, especially since that was their first major label release. The first major label release was a 6-track EP that was essentially like 10 minutes long, or not even 10 minutes. It's a very brisk listen. Grand hour. It's nice.
What's the deal with them re-recording stuff? Because like earlier, I searched Game of Pricks on just the normal Apple Music search, and it came up with 2 different recordings. Like one is the Alien Lanes version, and then another is on an EP. And it sounds completely different, almost like they actually tried to record it properly instead of just like, here's the song, it's done. So, like, what did they, is it like they play it live and then evolve it, and then he goes, oh, let's take what we did and like, actually lay it down proper. But it if you want to find it, it's not on the main place you would go to look for the proper recording of the song. Like, or does he just not even put that thought into it? It's just like,
sometimes, most times, it's more like, and this might surprise you guys. For every Guided by Voices release, there are like three scrapped like projects that eventually evolve into like the final product. Like there's so many names and like ideas that Bob has dropped in interviews, which is saying something because he's pretty tight-lipped for an indie rocker. Like they didn't really do many interviews in their prime, and they still don't do many interviews. Like you'll hear like three different album names, and you think, oh, they're just album names, but no, like occasionally, like a record will resurface, like a lost record will resurface or be reconstructed by a super fan, and it's completely different. Like sometimes the recordings are just like not unrecognizable, but like recognizable to a point where you think, oh wait, that doesn't sound right, or this is a different mix, or there's a little snippet in here that isn't on the final version. And then of course there's the Suitcase series, which is essentially what I did, but with like the GBV Selects, but it's Bob sourcing from his own extensive back catalog.
And just making like a regular compilation series.
Well, regular in that like there are like 4 volumes and each have like at minimum 30 tracks. So if you want to do some real digging.
But then that means it's only like an hour and a half total because all the songs. That's what I like. It is interesting that like I'm always someone that's like no record should be longer than like 45 minutes to like 50 minutes. Anything more than that, you're really testing my patience. So the fact that like an album like this has like what 19 tracks,
18 records,
18 tracks.
Yeah.
It's 41 minutes. I'm like,
yeah,
I got nothing bad to say about that. That works for me. Or even like the Vampire Weekend album, Father the Bride, 18 tracks. It's like 59 minutes. I like that. That's better than like putting out a triple length and you have to listen to the whole thing and you can't skip anything. And it's like, guys, I understand you have a lot of ideas, but that doesn't kill your darlings, like use the best of the best and make it flow and don't make it a chore. It needs to be, and I'll say that that's like a consistent thing where I would listen to multiple albums straight by Guided by Voices in a row. And every time I'd be like, how much longer is this album? I would check and I would either be on the last song or like 1 or 2 songs from the end. And I'm like, all right, can't complain. It's about the time I was ready for it to be over anyway. So
Bob's one of those rare specimens where he has his cake and eats it too. Like he'll simultaneously overstuff a record and also sequence it in a way where it works. Like it works in spite of the you don't feel the bloat. It's like going to a buffet and not getting the meat sweats somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's also like this one's weird. The ending on non-absorbing because, like you said, the track before it felt like more of a closer, and this non-absorbing almost feels like it's going to keep going, and it could almost be like a 30-track album, and you're just sort of into the groove of it. You're not really like focused on like this is the closer, the album's done. You're just kind of like, oh, that's it. All right.
In a way, that's smart. It's smart ending on an earworm, like a little ditty. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, a little ditty. It's not even a little ditty by Guided by Voices standards. A little ditty's like 20 seconds.
It's a regular ditty.
It's a regular ditty.
Well, I was going to say that,
please.
Please say something.
We've talked about Glenn Danzig a little bit on this episode, but we've talked about, some punk records throughout, the lifetime of this show. And it's funny because I grew up listening to punk music, so I love short songs. It's like it's always the funniest thing when you pay like $40 for a punk record that has like 14 songs and a runtime of 10 minutes. But like I love it. I like these songs. They it's just like you said. It's the perfect portion size at the buffet because like even the shorter songs, I'm like. I get it. Like, even if this is just like an idea that, like, I don't know what the intention was going into recording it, but if it was, that, oh, I just have this idea and I want to get it out there, it still serves its purpose, because like I don't think these songs would benefit from repeating themselves 3 times over, making themselves 3 times as long. It's perfect in the amount that it has there. So for better or for worse, I just want to say that I think the song lengths are perfect, and I do like short songs, and I like songs that don't follow the conventions of every other song. It's one of the reasons why people don't like Animal Collective, like the normies don't like Animal Collective, because they gauge it with what they're familiar with. They're like, well, this doesn't sound like that verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and
listen to it in a vacuum. Yeah, you have to
Totally.
you have to learn to listen to certain things in a vacuum.
Exactly.
But I mean, you also have to. I mean,
What is
it's
that
difficult to
Kamala
do that.
Harris quote that people were memeing on, where it was like, you exist within the context of
Yeah.
everything that came before you, and past, present, future, something like that.
No, I think she said the tradition of dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the minds of the living. Wait, no, that was Karl Marx.
Okay, I was about to say. Jesus Christ. I wasn't expecting her to be that, woke.
No. Well, you weren't? Haven't you heard everything the Republicans have been saying? Jeez. Wow. Greg.
After the current owner of Twitter became the unofficial vice president, I stopped paying attention because I knew it was just going to drive me mad. I
look at how that turned out.
Yeah, exactly. What a twist.
It made no tangible difference. I'm still crazy and will continue to be.
Oh, there is one thing we haven't talked about. The album cover. Yes. Bob's second passion, like artistic passion, is photo collage. Or like just regular like physical collages. He's essentially responsible for every Guided by Voices album cover, including. So
you're saying in Spirit They're Gone, Spirit They Vanished style, he stole this image and repurposed it for his album cover?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Wow. I mean, he typed the. I remember. I think
to draw that. It's a black and white sketch with some light shading. He couldn't do that himself.
I mean, he gotta. This guy was a 7th grade teacher. He had to occupy his mind somehow, and he just loved cutting shapes out of, or cutting like images out of magazines and journals and like pasting them onto each other.
He can't write 7 songs in one school day and call it, job well done. He has to actually do his job as a teacher, is what you're saying? Except not whenever he's making collages and passing it off as work.
Whoa! What happened? Why the 3rd degree? This guy's.
I don't know.
Kid Kilowatt. That feedback kind of reminded me of. I think it was a Steve Reich project where you'd suspend a mic above an amp and like have it sway like a pendulum.
Oh,
and
so
it would
do like an artificial or almost like practical. What do you call it? Stereo panning. Yeah, it's literally just the signal that it's picking up.
I thought that was a cool touch. Yeah, that kind of looping feedback sound makes the song for me because it's most of the song. Jordan, have you since listened to any other Guided by Voices projects?
I have not.
You've not.
This is the only one, but I'm definitely like I said before, I got to thank you because,
of course.
As soon as I started listening to this, I was like, shit, I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. So, better late than never, as they say.
Thank you for recommend. I mean, in an unintentionally recommending. Like, I had never thought of like now. I'm itching to like play Pro Skater again while listening to GBV. That sounds like a blast. I might just do that this weekend. Yeah, that sounds
perfect
awesome.
Pairing. Yeah.
Yes, great idea. But like as for where you should go next, this kind of I'd say this is an unofficial, like this is the first of an unofficial trilogy. Like there's this B1000 and then Alien Lanes. They're the the song, like the sound, like the album collage like trio in my book. So B1000 is like that's apparently A.V. Terra's favorite Guided by Voices record, which
that's true.
Is a no-brainer.
I forgot. Yes, I wanted to make sure that got brought up before we finished this because of that connection. And then you literally just like DM'd him the other day and asked, or no, you DM'd him. I DM'd him
about a month ago.
when we committed to doing this episode, and he finally got back to you like the day before we recorded it. That That's what he said, and I can see where he's coming from, but at the same
So
time,
wait, did
I think
you
I'm a
just
little too attached to this.
you just DM'd him saying what's your favorite Guided by Voices album?
I did. And then I said, because I know it kind of like it kind of informed the original idea for Sung Tongs, which was just like pared down guitar and drums. And he said he didn't like B1000 is his favorite. He likes some others, but he didn't really know what I was talking about with the Sung Tongs thing. And just for my own sanity, I went back to the interview I read that like planted that in my head. And it was that it was the Sung Tongs retrospective, the one that goes by I think track by track, like the 20th anniversary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Article.
Yeah.
AV literally says, we were going for something, and then he adds cheekily, guided by voices.
Nice. That's the same interview where Noah says he's just making sex sounds on Good Lovin' Outside. Is that the?
Oh yeah, that was great. Speaking of, well, actually, not speaking of. I don't want to keep.
Speaking of sex sounds, okay, no, go on. I'm interested.
I thought you were going to say that was the same interview where the guy asked AV about the cantina band genre from Star Wars, jizz wailing.
Jizz wailing, my favorite.
AV's like, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. In so many words, he didn't say that, but that's what I would have said if I was him. Although apparently that got retconned recently. Disney became aware of how much of a meme that was, so they were like, actually, can you go on Wikipedia and change it to like something else? I think it's
come on.
It's like Skaz or something like that now.
Skaz?
Something silly. I don't know what it is, but
that sounds even more
jizz
dirty.
wailing is silly, but like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yes, it's silly, but that's what George Lucas said it was. Are you gonna tell me that he's wrong? That you're going to tell me that George Lucas ever made a questionable decision in regards to Star Wars? This is the only reason I became aware of Guided by Voices is because of the IT crowd. There's an episode where Jen realizes how much of a nerd she is because of the fact that they've listened to Guided by Voices all the time. And I think there's even there's a separate episode where, no, I think it's the end of that episode where Richmond is like met a girl at the dinner party. Or it might have been the same season. It might not be the same episode, but they're listening to Game of Pricks on the radio. And like she's like, why is the music so loud? And then she turns it down and you can hear them like having sex in the background, and then they turn it back up. That's how I learned about the band, and I think it's fitting that that is how I discovered it. And we're now at a point where we've circled back to three nerds talking about Guided by Voices, which is how it began for me. So
yeah, cool.
So thank you
happy to facilitate. Yeah.
Thanks for watching a musician and a filmmaker.
And be sure to watch the spin-off podcast led by Alex that's going through every single Guided by Voices album chronologically from start to end. Every album is going to be an episode, or every song is going to be an episode. One of the two. He'll decide. The weight and the pressure is all on his shoulders, and he was fully aware of this idea before I started pitching it 45 seconds ago. So we're looking forward to that, and we're going to expect all of that content in high quality, so that we can mine it for ad revenue, and we don't have to do anything anymore. So, now, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time for Star Wars with a certain guest you've already seen before. And if you paid attention, you'll know who. But I'm not going to say it again because, fuck you. Thanks for watching. Bye!